We'll now call the budget workshop session to order. And tonight we're going to review some of the input from various council members and from, I think, the department managers as well. So, Dennis, we'll turn it over to you here to walk us through.
Okay. What I plan to do, I've got a very short presentation to address the major points from your comments, but then probably need to go through the comments that we've received, each line. Some of them won't take a lot of discussion, I don't think, but it really is up to you tonight. But let me go through the presentation first. The main question that is on, I think, the staff's mind, and the council, you raised it quite a bit, was pertaining to the wages. And in the drafted budget, the note stated that there was a 3.5% COLA and a 2% step increase for non-union, and union would get what they were allotted. And so quickly, I want to just go through how those were generated. The union employees, they have a negotiated contract currently in place that runs through 2018. And in that contract, which started the end of 2015, the union employees excuse me, were approved to have a 10% increase over 3 years. Some departments took that as 3.5, 3, and one of the departments, well, and others did a 3%, 3.5, 3.5. But at the end of the 3-year period under the union contract, those employees would have a 10% increase. Okay. The thought being that that would be a way of catching up those employees to their peers in similar sized communities doing similar work. Now, the non-union employees, as I understand it, the council approved a salary model last year, and in that model there was provision for a step-in grade system and a cost of living adjustment component to that. The employees would be eligible for a step increase equal to 2% for 5 years. And so new employees, when they get hired, they'd be in year 1. Over 5 years, under the policy, they would eventually get a 10% increase basically at the end of their 5 years. The current tenured employees that we already have working for the city, again, as I understand it, they were set to a step 3 this year, with the assumption being that over the next 2 years they would also receive steps in their wages to again get them caught up to what would be their comparable peers. Now, step 5 employees that are at step 5, they'd only be eligible for cost of living adjustments, and or there would also be adjustments done every 2 years where we'd go out, do a salary survey, again looking at comparable positions, and if adjustments need to be made in 2-year increments, we would do that. The city would be able to evaluate the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, each year. Again, the assumption being that for the non-union employees, this would catch them up. Whereas many years, I guess based on the survey studies that were done in 2016, there was quite a lag, and so there were some major adjustments done for this fiscal year. Now, just to quickly go over cost of living adjustments, we're often asked what determines what the cost of living adjustment needs to be. There's typically 3 indices that are considered, and one would be the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They look at the current cost of living. What they are publishing on their website for the last 12 months is that there's a national 2.5% cost adjustment, basically, meaning that if you're going to go out and try to buy something, it costs you 2.5% less to buy that same thing last year. And so they also have what they call a urban and clerical wage earners indices, and they also have one specifically to the New England region. Now, I guess we need to be a little bit careful with using that New England region one, because if that takes all the way from Maine down to New York and Boston in that area. And so you can see that that one right now they're saying is a 2.8% increase over the last 12 months. Then you also have Social Security Administration, which they calculate the cost of living adjustment for those that would be receiving Social Security. The Social Security Administration one they're saying is at 2% beginning December 2017, and that one actually references the top two Bureau of Labor Statistics. So when we talk about a cost of living adjustment, typically people will refer to these three to say what would be an appropriate cost of living adjustment. Now, that being said, the city is able to look at what's in the budget. Can we afford to do a cost of living adjustment? And so, again, these are just for reference points when we start talking about that. So when we look at what's the impact of the new model that was discussed last year, you have obviously the step component and the COLA. In the budget right now, if you move forward with providing steps, but you don't do a cost of living adjustment, you'd be looking at about a $30,000 increase in wages, Social Security, and retirement expenses. That's just you implementing the step process that was talked about last year. If you do just the COLA, it's about the same. If you do the COLA and the 2% step increase, that's about a $60,000 adjustment to the budget. And then, of course, there is that the council has the prerogative of doing zero step, zero COLA, and we run into the same situation of at what point do employees get caught up, or do we make major adjustments down the road? But something for the council to be looking at. So I think I want to pause at this point and I think open the discussion with the council relative to the wages, because really that's going to affect a good portion of what happens in the budget.
Hey, I got a question on the, did I cut you off?
No, you were too fast.
Oh, I didn't raise my hand. Would you want me to wait and raise my hand? Okay. Just on the percentages that you were showing, the CPIs are based on like CPIE, CPIW, CPIU, CPI so-and-so.
Right.
So what are those three based on? Which one of those categories?
The
Social Security is CPIW, I know that, but is the regional based on the CPIW?
CPIW.
Is the national based on the CPIW?
Right.
So it's all based on the urban and clerical workers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Martin?
What's your definition of caught up? I think that's where we're gonna run into a problem.
And that's based on the salary survey that is done and is provided by Maine Municipal, and looking at comparable cities and staff. And
But my understanding was caught up means we're going to be at the average of all these towns. Okay, so we brought everybody up to last year's average,
yeah,
or the
right.
prior year's average, whatever it was.
Right.
Right, so if they were up to average, and we do a step and a COLA, are you assuming that all these other towns are going up 4% and we're only going up 2%? Because if we're at average and we do COLA and they do COLA, we should still be at average. That's the way I see it. So I don't know why that step is there.
That's a good question. Again, it was, and I wasn't here for that discussion last year to
there was a discussion of where do we put people? And they, in my opinion, they should have been put higher than they were, but that's another story.
Last year, we caught them up, okay? Part of the discussion was we were gonna have a further discussion on the items that you just discussed. Well, that further discussion really never happened because Austin left, so you're there with that blank, and then so on and so forth, and we never brought that to the table wholly to discuss all that. Because there are certainly more adjustments that need to be made to that wage and classification program than just what we're talking about here on the surface. And those were all supposed to, well, we should have all discussed those and so on and so forth. So I don't really think that there were any agreements made as to, you know, actually, I could be wrong, but I think I was the one that said we should pay them what they hadn't been getting for the last 8 years, if I recall, okay? And so they're there anyways. So it's a matter, I think, of just cleaning up some of that language in the wage and classification program, and if we have to go in and do it in the admin policy also. I could be wrong with what I just said, but I think for the most part, I'm probably pretty much spot on.
The only thing I could see would be if the averages were a year old,
Right.
then that does kind of put you behind right away.
Well, I don't think that they were a year old.
Well, they'd have to be. I mean, that we asked for data, we got some data.
Just for the record, but we all knew as department heads that the information, and when we receive our raise, we are 1 year behind on the averages. Because so for us to get our wage adjusted in 2017, we were using 2016 data because there is no data for 17.
Right. So next year, you do the review all over again.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I remember the discussions on the tool very well. I remember the 18-year tool, I remember the 5-year tool. I was involved with any and all that, so I could probably answer any questions that you may have about that.
No, but the thing is that we didn't sit down and discuss it and put it in the plan like we should, so it's there, okay, and exactly what we were going to do. That's the stumbling block with me. We didn't correct our deficiencies. Yeah, we didn't even correct the ones back from 2008, okay? Well, no. I mean, I read through there trying to find all the stuff that you brought up. It's not in there. So, that's part of the problem. We discuss things here at the table, they get all done, and everybody's fat, dumb, and happy, and we don't go back and fix them.
Jane?
We were all put on year 3 versus where we were to be placed because of the cost of going to year 5. We were put on year 3. So anyone who was here for any length of time was put on the 3rd year. And it had to do with cost.
But that was state average at the 3rd year, correct? Not state average, but the group
Yes.
of towns average.
Right.
Yeah.
No, five was the average.
No.
Groups, year 3. Year 3 was the average. Year 4 was a 2% increase. Year 5 was a 2% increase. And the reasoning at that point was longevity steps. An employee that stays with the organization for a certain amount of time has more value or should be more valuable than the previous year. That's what it was. But year 3 of the 5-year tool, year 3 was the average of the salary survey in the 6,000 to 12,000 population.
But you could make the argument that you and Mike and Wanda probably were at the top of the 18, well, I'm sorry, Wanda, probably not. But you were at the top of the 18 years, okay? So now you went from the top to the middle of the scale.
Yeah.
So that's where I was wondering why some of us were not put at 5, because that's where they were on the other scale.
And Jane hit it just right, because for all of us that was above the mid-range, which was year 3, if the council would have chosen to make us all So the new tool would have been 5 years or 4% above average. For all the employees that was above year 3, along with the wage adjustment, it was an astronomical price. So the council asked if we could all of us that was above year 3, whether it be 7, 10, 12 years, just put us all to the average, and then that's where we went, and it was a much smaller number on being over.
Maybe I'm not explaining correctly, but what I'm saying is, once you hit the top of the scale, you're at the top of the scale.
Yeah.
You guys were slid down the scale, so now you're gonna get increases again if we follow that, those steps. So that, what I'm saying is, your average for those with longevity should have been year 5.
Yes.
I mean, not with the pay. Year 5, you're at the top of the scale at that average. Is the way I thought it was gonna work, but maybe I'm wrong.
So
I wish we had that documentation here to see.
So the old tool, which was spread out for 18 years, year 9 was the mid-range, and everyone, including the council, agreed that we don't believe anyone should have to be in their position for 9 years to be average pay. So that's why the new tool was adopted to be a 5-year tool. Keep in mind that even for the older seniority people that had 17, 18, and even Mike and I at the time, we were at year 13, so we were not at the top of the scale. But keep in mind that with 13 years of experience, we were about 0.75% higher than the average, but it had been years since we even looked at the tool. So the average was so low because the tool hadn't been looked at in 5 years that even our 1% made us way down below what the average should be. So although we were, Mike and I, and the older ones, whoever, that had been here for a while, even though we went to a lower scale, it made no difference to us because even putting us in year 3, there was a wage adjustment that was done.
Okay, I understand. So this year you're on step 4, next year you're on step 5, the year after that you're still on step 5.
That's right.
All right, I understand.
The step 5 was
That's
the
the way I
Okay,
understood it too.
I understand and I'm okay with it. All right, I
We
understand.
didn't refine the issues, is what I'm saying, the way we should have.
I guess my question, we did a comparison on wages between the people that work here and the people in all these other communities. Did we bother to ask whether any of them had a step program, or how many years their people had worked in those positions, or, were we comparing apples to apples in the first place or not? I don't know.
May I answer?
Yeah.
So, they may all be good questions, Gary, but they are next to impossible to receive. Okay, every community is going to have a public works director that's been there for 10 years, and there may be a police chief that's been there a year, so if the data is not usable. What the council and us as a group has decided, if we use communities and keep names of the communities out, 6,000 to 12,000 in population, and take the average, and that's what it is. So that average for this population, 6,000 to 12,000.
10,000. 6 to 10.
Okay, 6 to 10, okay. So 6 to 10,000, the average will be the middle of the scale, which was year 3. Those of us employees here that were more than year 3, year 4, year 5, year 10, year 15, we all got moved to year 3 because the council could not afford to pay the step increases plus the reimbursement to bring them where they belong. And we as department heads we didn't argue that. We were glad that a new tool was even adopted. Because we all believe that there should not have never been a tool that was 18 years long. And then the other part of the tool that we got, one of the other things was, there was some of us that was 3 to 4 in a group. And to give you an example, there would have been the police chief, there would have been the fire chief, there would have been myself. So in the old tool, they would take the average of them 3. Well, the low man got boosted up in wages, the high man got brought down because we went to the middle. and the council all agreed that that shouldn't be done. So in the new tool, we are all individuals. You're not gonna pay, you're not gonna pay the low person scale more than they're worth, and you're not gonna take away from the guy that's at the top of the scale. Some of them groups had as much as 5 people in it. It just wasn't fair.
Where's the new tool?
Okay, chances are that you and Mike, if you get the cost of living and 2% for the next 2 years, the next time we do the survey, you're going to be above average. What do we do then?
Okay, so that's a good question, but it may not be, because if in year 4 is a 2% increase for longevity, let's call that longevity, okay? When we look at it 2 years down the road, and let's say that the council gave us 2% for 2 years, and then in year 3 we looked at the tool and we were going to make an adjustment. We would still be looking at what our mid-range is, and then year 2 and year 3, 4, and 5, we'd be 4% above that. So whatever the mid-range is, it changes every time you look at the tool. So if you gave us a 2% in 1 year, and the following year you gave us another 2%, if the rest of the market had not gone up, yes, we would be high. But if the rest of the market had gone up, it doesn't matter that we're on step 3 or step 4. What you do is, when you're comparing our mid-range point, you take the 4% off to see what the average is. So, I don't know, Dave, let's just say that it went from $50,000 to $51,000 for the average. That mid-range point would be adjusted to $51,000, and then it would be, because we are beyond step 5, but we know it's capped, it would be $51,000 plus 4%. But we'd had already been getting the 2% and the other 2% for the...
And I'm saying you're going to be above the whatever that average is plus 4% by then.
So whatever...
What do we do then?
Well, the only way you're going to be above
That was
is
gonna be
if
part of the discussion, I
if
thought.
your COLA adjustments was more than the other communities did. So in essence, for the longevity, for my longevity, you're going to pay me average. You're going to pay me average plus 2% for year 4, and average plus another 2% for year 5. So that makes me 4% above the average.
Okay, but what I'm saying is 5 years from now,
Yeah?
every one of you will be at step 5.
Yes.
And you will all be above state that group average.
Right. So maybe the part of the tool that you don't agree with
Is the 2%.
is the 2% for year 4 and the 2% for year 5. Maybe it sounds...
Maybe we have to do it to find out, but I'm just saying.
Okay, let's try that.
So I'm not arguing with you, Dave, honest, but the tool that was presented and approved by the council was that 5-year, and it would be a 2% for year 4 and a 2%, an additional 2% for year 5. And the reason, from our side of it, the reason was the, that's your longevity step. That's thank you for staying with us, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, I really don't know what you want to call that. From our point, it was, I considered it as a longevity, you know, that you're getting 2% in year 4 and another 2% in year 5. Because you've been with us, you're worth 4% more than the guy that's down the street that's just average. So that's how it was perceived from me. I don't know how the rest feel, but I'm assuming that we all understood the same thing.
Any other comments from anybody on council?
One thing, we brought everybody up to the average, because prior to that, wasn't there some discussion of bringing certain people up in increments? And then we decided that wasn't the way to do it, because how do we make it the final decision? Am I
That's
correct on this?
exactly what started it.
Because we were saying we got so much money, let's do so many people here, and then we'll bring these people up here, and then we said, no, that's not right. We said, let's bring everybody to the average, and then we're done with it, we'll bite the bullet at whatever the cost is, and then I agree that I think there was supposed to be more discussion on where we were gonna go from that point going forward, as Phil stated.
Did we record that meeting? That was a long meeting, that's why
I'm sure, but
Was that a personnel meeting?
no, we never had a personnel committee meeting, I don't believe.
Council is personnel, and I think that that was held in a personnel meeting.
No, it wasn't. I'm the personnel chairman. I didn't call it as a personnel committee meeting.
Sorry, Phil.
Council meeting.
No, it was a budget meeting.
It was a budget meeting?
Yes, it was.
I think so, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's what I remember.
But it should have been discussed at the personnel level afterwards, but it never happened. And all those things that we probably discussed tonight were probably discussed then, but it never got formulated and put into the wage and classification program, and or if we had to change it into the chapter 2 of the administration policy. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
And it would have been recorded if
Well, then
the,
let's.
if it was working properly.
Okay, well, let's look and see if it was recorded and extract exactly what we said so we can go from there. I'm tired of what if and all the time.
I just have a question. So, you say 2% year 4, 2% year 5, but did I understand that you also said that an adjustment could be made if the average changes, so it could indeed be more than 2%?
So them, Nicole, are
Yes.
just step raises, 2% for year
But-
4.
But it's not going to be based on your salary today. It's going to be based on your salary, the average salary at that time. So it could indeed be more than 2%.
It would only be the 2% of what the mid-range point is, which is year 3. So
But that can change, is what.
It won't
Yeah.
change the percentage, it'll change the amount of money.
right.
But it could
Yes.
change an increased percent if the amount of money changes on the
No,
average.
it's
So
it's
what
like
if-
2% of 50,000 is 1,000, and 2% of 60,000 is 1,200. So the step goes from 100, from 100, or 1,000, let's say, to 1,200, when that average goes up.
Right, but the increase is still more than 2% because the base would change,
So if
right?
Yeah.
If the base is 50,000 and then it goes up to 52,000, the base changes, and then you put a 2% on top of that. So
Yes.
it's still more than a 2% increase.
Yes,
No,
it'll
it's
always-
more than the 2% on the 50,000, but the 50,000 is history.
So when-
52 is the number.
Right, but most salaries don't work that way, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
If I understand it right,
Yes.
so the average is 50,000.
Yes.
And in year 4, I got 50,000 plus 2%.
Right,
And we didn't look at the tool, we went into year 5, and it was another 2% on top of that.
right,
And then in year 3, we looked at the tool, and the wage went to 55,000.
right,
So it would be 55,000 in the mid-range,
right.
plus 2% for the year 4 that we're already at, and then another 2% for what, at year 5. So yes, you are right, that,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish is that obviously the employees are getting paid what they're worth to the organization. The assumption is that there's a learning time, right? They're going to get on the job, and for a period of 3-5 years, they're going to be learning their job. And at the end of that learning period, they should be getting paid what they're worth, so to speak. But that's not going to get them to the very peak of their range. With all of these positions, you're going to have a minimum and a maximum. When somebody gets to the maximum, we can't pay them anymore. And that's where the cost of living adjustments come in. The cost of living adjustments move that range just a little bit so that that's their compensation, really, is just that difference in the cost of living. So it's really a matter of, right now on that curve, of getting them up to that peak. Are they where they need to be on their average, or are we maxing them out with the top of their range, right? Some of these employees that have been here a long time, they should be near that very peak of their maximum range, and the 2% COLA, and it just happens to be that it's about the same as the step increase this year. But they still can't go beyond the maximum wage range that we have set up for them. I mean, it sounds like we need to have a lot more discussion on the policy. As far as the dollar amounts go, maybe let me get to the end of the presentation which I think has a pretty good bottom line that we need to keep in mind with all of this. And let's quickly jump to mileage reimbursements. I know there was a question about that. What constitutes a mileage reimbursement and who's eligible for it? So currently the federal travel reimbursement rate is 53.5 cents per mile travel. The city adopted a 42-cent per mile policy many years ago, and it's not been revisited since. So right now we're still operating under the 42-cent per mile reimbursement policy. The city does not have a written policy for eligibility at this point in time. It just comes under supervisor discretion. So if somebody takes the vehicle, or takes their vehicle, they typically will say, is it okay if I take my own vehicle, and lay out the reasons for why they want to use a personal vehicle if a city vehicle is available. If a city vehicle is available, it's good weather, and they're comfortable driving the sedan around in the summer, there's a difference between that and in the wintertime when some of the employees have more heavy-duty trucks, SUVs, that they want to be driving in inclement weather rather than the 2 sedans that we have in the fleet system. And so right now it's supervisor discretion on the reimbursement. But typically if an employee uses their car for city business and a city vehicle is not available, they would be eligible for reimbursement.
I mean, I think the normal policy is you pay whatever the federal guideline is, you know, and next year it may be different, maybe 50 cents, it may be 55, but I think we should just go by the federal travel reimbursement. I know any companies I know, that's what they do, so.
So right now, the dollar amounts that are in the budget, keeping in mind that mileage line is not just for mileage reimbursement, it's also for travel expenses related to training. So if somebody's flying somewhere or something like that, that also comes out of that line. Okay. So real quickly, I guess in summary, the council's suggestions without the wages. We haven't gone through your list of comments yet, but I've gone through it, and when you look at generally the comments that you gave me, it makes an adjustment to the budget of $151,000. Depending on what happens with the wages, that could go down another $50,000. So the budget after the changes would be from just under 11 million to 10.8 or 10.9 million. Last year's budget was at 10.2, which means you're still looking at a 6.4% increase in the budget. Now, I've also passed out to you tonight a draft revenue plan or budget for the 2018, and preliminarily, what we're looking at there is an indication that we need to cut another $115,000 out of the budget in order to stay in the revenues. And so, but even with that $115,000 being taken out, you're still looking at a 5.2% increase in the budget. And so I think at that point we can go through each of your line items and have some discussion of where you might want to have other things looked at or taken out. We were able to, since our last meeting, we got numbers on the unemployment cost that we were going to have. That generally stayed flat. It did go up a little bit for fire and EMS, but for others it went down just a little bit. And so I'm happy to go through the budget by line item if you want to go that way.
You said you got up there, total budgeted was $11 million? $11,035,149?
That's the request from.
So that's with that's with the enterprise funds, operations, and capital.
Okay, well, the document, the reason why I'm asking, the document I got here that has a combination of the departments and the enterprise fund, 10,020,094.
Yeah, and then the capital fund is on top of that.
So you add the capital, so. Including capital.
Including capital.
All right. Thank you.
What would council like to do?
Well,
Want to go through
I think we need to pay our people. But, and I don't, I mean, you'll notice I have one comment here. Dave Martin wants to keep the budget to 3 or 4% increase. So I like to see us give the manager a number and you make it work. But I would support that employee plan. And then when we have to reduce their wages in 2 years, then we'll fight that battle then.
So what are you proposing for the wages?
I'm proposing the 60,000, I guess. 2% plus 2%. Is everybody on step at least? No. Christina, you're on 1. 1 to 2 is the 2%, I imagine? They're all 2%, yeah, so 2 and 2, I guess, is what I would propose on salaries. But they're gonna need to find some cuts somewhere. And I don't really care where. So, that's me.
Any thoughts from anybody else?
I'm thinking at 2% here. But I want to put a caveat on it that we need to sit down and get the documentation corrected so everybody's on the same page. And that's both our fault and the manager's fault, not you.
So why should they pay for that?
They're not paying for it.
They are if you don't give them the step.
I know, exactly.
Another option, which you can still grant a COLA, in a sense, opening up the range further, but the actual pay increase only goes up a certain percentage. And really what you're doing is you're just adjusting how much they might get increases in the future. It tops them out further down the road. That way you're still accounting for the cost of living adjustment, but it doesn't necessarily help them with the pocketbook right away. Another argument that's been thrown out that just to make the council aware is where the union workers are getting a 3.5%, 3 and 3.5% this year.
Listen, the whole purpose of the wage and classification program when it was initiated was to make the adjustment so that the non-union employees would feel properly compensated. The program was neglected since it was incepted in 2008 when they initially paid and then they never paid it correctly again after that. Last year, I put my fist down on the table and said we're going to pay it, all right? There are some adjustments that need to be made to this program because it hasn't been looked at in 8 years since it was approved. And just because the union's getting 3.5 doesn't mean that everybody else has to get 3.5. These poor people never had a program whatsoever to begin with, and it makes the union guys look bad because they're over there struggling and fighting and stuff like that to get what they get, and then why bother when everybody else is going to get it also? I mean, you can have this argument back and forth all day long, okay? But there are some things that need to be done to that needs to, so it can be done and done correctly, and we start following it and not put it on the shelf for 8 years and then bring it out and say, well, but we only want to pay them just a portion of that because that's too much money. I think they're where they need to be right now, okay? And what we need to do is clean up the program and going forward, start paying them accordingly.
Technically,
I agree with that.
Technically, they're a year behind where they should be, and next year they'll be 2 years behind.
We won't be if that COLA adjustment is made. We'll still, if COLA went across the entire state and you make a COLA adjustment for 18, when we look at the tool in 19, we should be awful close, unless the rest of them communities in the 6,000 to 10,000 made bigger adjustments. But there's no way of knowing that. That's why we were supposed to look at it every 2 years. I mean, and we're into year one and no one's looked at the wage adjustment salary for this year because we agreed that every 2 years would be sufficient to do that.
And then the other thing is that when these wage and classification programs are put together, and of course, if you're the person that's doing the study, you're going to recommend that it be looked at again by the professionals out there that do the comparison, contrasting the job descriptions and stuff like that, and make those adjustments, and they recommend anywhere between 3 and 5 years to do that, and that hasn't been done again. So, and that's an expensive process when they do that. That was $17,000 or $18,000 when we bid it back in 2005 or 17. Go ahead. I'm done.
So with the new tool adopted in the 5-year or whatever, there is no more looking at job qualification, or, you know, there is no more outside studies, because we agreed that it was repeatable and defendable to use that salary survey for all them communities that fall within that population range. So them studies don't need to be done anymore. And that, yeah, that was done in 2008, and it was done by 2 different companies to develop a tool that we turned around and had to fix ourselves.
Right.
So I like to think that that tool is gone. There's no such thing as that 18-year tool anymore.
But it's still here, it's still documented, and we haven't changed the policy, okay? We discussed it last year, and that's what we decided we were gonna, we never brought it forward and finished cleaning it up.
Okay, so I
All right.
agree then. That should
So
be-
I'm not disagreeing with that whatsoever,
Okay.
but it needs to be official,
Yeah.
okay?
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, and I stuck it way out there last year when I did what I did, and I'll do it
you did.
again if I have to,
And,
but,
and you did, and I think I can speak for all department heads. We all appreciated what you guys done for us last year, just so that's clear. We're not being ungrateful, we're not asking for
Thank you.
a whole lot. I want everyone to understand, from my perspective, as a group, we were thankful for what you've done to try to get us up to where we should be. We know that was a lot of money in that adjustment, and now we're talking so that we don't have to do that again 2 years from now, have another $100,000 adjustment or more.
Well, we could sit here and talk all night about these wages, and we're not going to settle it here. I think the
We haven't
truth
heard
is,
from everybody.
anybody else got any comments on the wages?
I agree with the area fill on the 2% moving forward, so, and revisiting the policy because it was never properly addressed in the first place.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
same thing?
Yeah.
2% increase? And we're just talking 2%, we're not talking, are you talking 2%, or are you talking 2 and 2, or what are you, so we don't get confused here?
2%.
Okay?
I think, I agree with Councilor Martin. That's what I think, that to get them to where they need to be, so that, like you said, a few years from now, then it's not another $100,000 to get them back.
So he's agreeing with you, what are you?
I'm agreeing with me, yeah, 2 and 2.
2 and 2, so you want to give him 4%,
Yep.
okay? So year 4, year 2,
At this time, I support the 2%, and if we can find the other 2% in the budget without cutting services to the community, then I would support the 4.
Bill?
2.
Well, David, in all honesty, you want to keep the budget at 3 or 4%. You can't. I mean, that's biggest single item in here that we're talking about by far.
Can you?
There's other major capital improvements, if you want to take those off the table, that you could make that up.
Put them back on next year then. That's what they do, yeah.
Right.
Going
I
through
mean, I
this
don't care, you
budget,
want to delay it for a year, go ahead. put it at a, 4% increase this year and then put the mill rate up 6% next year, if that's what you want to do. It doesn't matter.
Going through this budget, I would say that probably capital improvements is about the only place where you're really gonna get much money. I mean, I didn't have a very good time going through this because I couldn't find much. Why are you laughing? I mean, my list was only 2.5 pages. So, you guys are doing a good job. Don't let that go to your head.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you.
Don't let it go to our heads.
Yeah, you might have different colors coming out tomorrow. She got that from her sweater yesterday, wiping her brow.
Just nerve right up.
Anyway, so do I take it then that we're looking at 2% now? Doing the wage and classification schedule? Making it a little clearer than what it is? And carrying on from there? I guess, from what I've heard.
So essentially, you'd be giving them a step this year to be consistent with the model. If you only do the 2%, I think we still need to adjust their wage range. That, again, it just makes it so they'd be eligible for increases further down the road still. But that wouldn't create a budget impact beyond the 2%. Now, we need to get down and look at this policy as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
And I want to make sure we don't have the same issue next year. So, you're the chair of the personnel committee.
Yeah,
When do you want to call that meeting?
when everybody's got their information that they want, that when everybody reads it and they get their inputs ready, all right? Last year I raised that up and only 3 people out of 7 had read that policy.
Okay.
No need to read it, we're writing a new one.
Wow. The basics of the policy is good, it's just some of the computations and information.
I would
that need to
suggest
be
that
corrected.
you put a copy of that for the 13th meeting in everybody's package.
In addition with the other 2-inch.
Not to do on the 13th, but so that they all
Just
have
so it's in there? Okay.
Yeah, we could do that December 24th. I got nothing. Right?
That policy? If I know where that policy is, I'll get copies of it.
Okay.
I don't need a copy, I have one. I have it in my, I think I have it on my computer, I'll email it to everybody again that didn't get it.
Would you email it to me?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a copy of the 5-year tool?
No, because it never got published.
So I could share that with you.
Well, how'd you get it? We did.
He wrote it.
Yeah, share that, send it to me and then I'll send it to everybody else, okay?
Might be why there's some confusion, too, David.
So honestly, from my perspective, or from my memory, I thought we adopted the 5-year plan.
But there were other issues in there that needed to be addressed, okay? And it's not done.
Oh, and that may be. I'm not disputing that.
Okay, and that's my point, okay? I'm not arguing that part of it, okay?
And one of the reasons that my assumption was that we accepted the 5-year plan was because it was the council's choice to put everyone with 3 years or more at year 3. So that tells me that the council had accepted the tool. Now, we may not have agreed at what percentage we pay after year 4 and year 5, that may all be up, but I remember that we were going to be at year 3.
What's the date on that?
Okay.
So moving on, did you make any adjustments in this budget or whatever based on reviews of diesel and gas and fuel oil? Has any of that been done?
We've looked at, again, as we went through, for instance, general government, based on the comments that we had, So
I
internet,
recall it was February of
No.
2008.
the comment that the internet costs really aren't going up. And just to keep those the same, that was an adjustment down in the budget of $560. There was a request to reduce the training education in general government by 500. So I've reflected all of those in each of the departments. And that's when I come back to the presentation, that so far your cuts account for, what was it? So far the cuts, based on the comments I've received, is 150,000 down, 150,712 down. So it's not much of a cut. As you've indicated, there's not a lot in there, but it really causes us to have to look now at what are the other major ticket items, and usually that's the capital improvements. And so what I've passed out to you is the capital improvement sheets. I guess that's where we look at the prioritization of what we want to spend money on with the capital.
Downtown infrastructure is bird's eye, correct?
Basically.
Basically. So, I mean, I just delete it. Bird's eye funds will come out of the TIF. If we can do the project this year, with whatever we've got in the TIF to use, plus the grants, we'll do it. If we can't, the rest of it will wait till next year. So I just do away with that anticipated expense of 200,000 in the allocation of 80,000. And I take it out of the future years as well, because it's not really a capital project in my mind.
Okay. Well, that takes up most of the chunk of the budget difference right there by doing that.
Fire equipment reserve, that allocation this year for an anticipated expense, 94,000. I'd really like to split it, Scott. Put a little extra money in the maintenance deal there to maintain the other half of that equipment till next year, if that's feasible.
It'll go up in price. Yeah, whatever you want is.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to look how we spread it over 2 years
Yeah.
rather
Whatever
than
you,
one.
whatever you wish to do. We'll have to pay for the extra sets, but
Make sure you just replace the ones that are worse.
they're all at 15 years.
I know
They're
that.
all pretty ragged.
I know that, but you've got some probably that are a lot worse than others.
No chance for a grant in that deal, huh?
We've been trying. We've tried 2 years in a row. That's why they've gone out so long.
And once you get those and you pull up with them, I would suggest that instead of replacing them all at one time, I know you've heard this before, at one time, that you,
That's how they came, was on a grant. So I've been trying to.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but sometimes we sit here and wait and hope we bet on the grants, and grants are probably gonna be less and less,
I agree.
okay? So you need to start looking at your budget for the future as if you're not gonna have all those grants.
So if we cut that one in half,
I don't know, what does everybody think?
That's a reluctant yes.
I mean, we can put it on the, let's
Yeah,
look at
I'm
what
saying
else
it
there is.
reluctantly too. But
Half would be, Dennis, half would be 60, because it
Right.
would go up to about 120.
The individual costs.
Well, we can just put a flag on it and see what else you want to consider before
Yeah.
we come to that one.
just the jackets. We'll wait and get pants.
And how many sets do you have here? What were you planning on buying for sets?
44.
44.
And what are you buying? What was it? What's,
Turnout gear.
so is it jackets and pants and,
Jackets, pants, hoods, and gloves.
$44. That's four, you have 44 different people?
Yeah.
Do you ever have 44 people out at the same time? Have you ever had that?
We're not going to share turnout gear.
I asked a question.
Do we have? No.
You know, a lot of the volunteers keep their gear at home. They're in their vehicle,
Just respond.
so they can just go, respawn. So it's in their car, yeah.
So we get turnout gear for the full-time people first and then work on the rest.
If we want to do what Mr. Councilor McDonough does, some of the volunteer stuff's in worse shape.
They get the
They're all-
hand-me-downs.
They're all 15 years old. Yeah, they're worn.
They only have a service life of about 10 years, regardless. And actually, at the end of 10 years, they should be replacing them. And they've stretched them out to 15 years, hoping to get grants. So, you know, that's a hard call to make, especially when you're messing with personal protective equipment.
One person gets burned and
All over.
What are we spending on the municipal building? 52,000 this year. What are we doing next year?
The main expense there that we're looking at is the boiler replacement.
Is this biomass boiler, guy? Is that the pellet boilers not
Yeah.
working? So are we working to see if we can get something done so that
We'll
we
be
don't have to pay
reviewing the
for?
contract and seeing where we can get out of it.
That's been ongoing, hasn't it?
it probably will be until it's paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we go to
What-
82.
Is there anything wrong with the boiler besides it's getting old?
The one downstairs?
Yeah. The oil fire burner.
Just this weekend, we had to have it fixed. This stack was rusted out. Some of the piping
Is it getting beyond economical repair?
that's what our furnace man said. We're lucky where we are.
And the pellet boiler in this building does not work
Correct.
because
The master box is burned out,
The circuit board,
circuit board.
none of them are working except over at
The rec.
the rec
for
center.
now, for now.
We have a
The
huge
libraries
debt on it.
isn't working, this one isn't working,
yeah, but
fire
I
hall
mean,
isn't working.
what's the lifetime on that circuit board? It can't be that old.
Well, no, it was like, I think they put 3 or 4 of them in, they burned out within a matter of using it a couple times.
So something is not installed properly.
Correct.
So why wasn't that addressed?
Because the company went out of business.
And you couldn't get the parts or? was
They're
it-
gone.
They went out of business.
After they sold 4 furnaces, they went bankrupt and they no longer exist.
It's almost
If they're out of
impossible to get
business, why do
parts.
we have to pay them?
We were sold a bill of goods,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay?
It wasn't a generic.
And that's part of the problem without going out for bids.
Especially.
You just select one vendor and go for it, and you suffer for it later.
We still owe, according to our pay schedule, about $780,000 on.
Who do we owe it to?
Finance company, the
Finance
finance
company.
approved.
Because we can't.
Who bought the loan?
We can't
Finance
get rid of
company
them
bought the loan.
Or default with them because
We're very
we
close.
tried to
They
go
paid
back,
Train.
we tried to go back to the company, right?
Yeah.
The company's
Yeah,
gone.
Train,
And the company
Train got
wants to
their
count
money,
the
the
finance.
But there must be some value in
vendor
that
got his
thing.
money, and we got nothing.
Well, that's what I've said, David, we ought to either find out whether there's some salvage value in them, or we better, either that, or we've got to find out if someone else
Can
can
make it
come up
work.
with the controls to put on them, because the augers and the hoppers and everything else are there, and make them work.
We gotta make it work or get rid of it. I mean, there's no point just having that sit there.
No, because it would be a great place to put the new furnace. That's what the furnace man said is.
Dave, you never got one of those.
No, I did not.
Mr.
Thank
Kirkpatrick.
you.
What
Sorry,
does
Dave.
what does your yearly report for train say?
Says we're saving money up the yin.
You're making out hand of the business.
Right.
And do they look at what you burn in fuel versus burn?
No, actually, I think Austin quit getting the report from them because it didn't mean anything.
It wouldn't do nothing for it, that's
Yeah.
what the problem is.
Yeah.
That-
This,
that-
this deal, when it was put in, was supposedly, if my memory serves me right, and it's quite a while ago, that, you know, Train was guaranteeing that we were gonna save so much money over oil or so on, but it really didn't, that really wasn't the case.
Super high efficiency.
And it ended up that we reported usages and everything else, but then found out that we weren't gonna get anything anyway, so, because of the way the contract was worded and agreed to, and that was it.
So, Mr. Marquis, how is yours wired up that makes it different and workable than the others?
I think it's 'cause his
Have you
building's
looked
new.
at that?
I had a rag stuck in my auger for 2.5 years. Finally got the rag taken out of it, and it worked perfectly fine after.
So did you look to come down here and see if there
Well,
was a
I'm
rag?
working on that, and unfortunately, our local provider's truck does not work, so I gotta call into Holton Agrical, because they've got the other back truck, to see if I can remove the pellets out of these silos and use them, seeing that we paid for them over 2 years ago. Before these pellets become useless, we'd like to use them.
A sizable amount.
Yeah, there was a problem
Yeah.
with the auger system because it was a vacuum system
Correct.
versus it being an auger.
And then they finally put the auger system in, and then that worked. But the other ones had circuit board issues, I never did.
You have a new building.
But
so
yours
there's no
hasn't ran for 2
electrical-
years.
Mine hasn't run for a year
So
now.
that,
This
so
is
that's
going on
why
the
it's
second
probably
year.
not
These
burnt
buildings
up.
aren't
So-
made for that.
When I finally figured out the problem with the not feeding, it ran flawless for 48 days, something like that. I ran 22 tons of pellets.
And then why did you stop after 48
Because
days?
our city, I wasn't allowed to buy pellets.
Well, it was cheaper than the
Oil
pellets.
was cheaper than pellets.
Well, yeah, you gotta go with
And oil's cheaper now than pellets.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the contract with Train, you may have some recourse if you had a performance guarantee in that contract. Unless Austin sent something to Train,
It wasn't
releasing
Austin.
them of the obligation of truing that up every year, then they're still required to do it. They still have to prove the savings every year.
Well, we'd be
And
glad
if
to
they
let you have the
don't,
contract and see once if you see, think there's something in there, but
That's how those work.
But I mean, we can't just sit here and ignore that we have $1 million system that's not working and we're not doing anything about it.
And we're making payments on it.
Yeah, except making payments.
well, I don't know if anybody remembers, but I specifically asked about the systems. It's not more than a year ago, and I was told they were all running now. And that was from the previous city manager, so.
Yeah, 'cause we're gonna, oh,
Well, anyway.
I got a question. Huey?
Sure.
Are there people out there that can look at those boards and maybe fix them from your engineering background?
Maybe not the boards themselves, you know, if the company has been out of business for several years, but you know, there are engineering companies that could come in and maybe retro-commission the system, maybe get the boilers up and running. How do you guys decide whether or not you're gonna burn oil or pellets every year?
Based on the price.
So you strictly look at the
That's what they've done in the last couple of years.
If oil's cheaper than pellets, it makes sense.
The time
to
they
burn
were
oil.
put in is when oil was back at,
$5 a gallon.
you know, or
$4
I'm
a
gonna say
gallon.
$4 a gallon.
But it
That's
does,
when they were put in.
but it does not make sense to leave a piece of equipment sitting there doing nothing. Even if oil is cheaper, we should burn some pellets to make sure that
Exercise
things
it,
are.
make sure
Oh,
it's
yeah.
functioning.
It should be exercised once a year, but to answer your question, the outfit in Holton, I mean, they probably put in a lot of these, so they may have some kind of more corporate knowledge than, say, you know, somebody that's only maybe worked on the units here and have just kind of been keeping them going. I forget the name of, what was the outfit in Holton that put those in?
McFarland.
Harbison or?
McFarland.
McFarland. You know, if they put in a lot of them, they may have better knowledge than somebody else.
Do you give the manager that information? Maybe he can contact him and talk to him?
I believe
Contact information? Somebody got? Thank you.
my conversations
Not gonna hurt
with,
to look into
Or
it.
sell the whole system for a minimum bid of $700,000.
Yeah, right.
We were told they were all supposed to be up and running at one point.
Well, they keep breaking. They run and then they break.
They run,
and
they
fix
break.
them and they break, and they fix them and they
Mine's
break.
seized up. Mine's all locked up. It needs a 100% tear down again.
Anyway,
Every hour.
we're not gonna lower the budget with that payment. That payment is there, so. Again, we're wasting a lot of time talking about something here that we're not gonna pick anything up here, so. I get, the only other one I see in the capital improvements is the street reconstruction one, the anticipated expense of $225,000. And I take it that's considering we're gonna do out here.
So that 225,000 expense was an anticipation of a 50-50 share on High Street and North Main.
And North Main.
And North Main. And I've since gotten information that we will not get a 50-50 cost share for North Main for 2018.
Okay.
They're gonna do one major project, and my estimates and my applications are in for High Street. All indications are to go for 2018. So there could be some money backed off that we would just move to another year for North Main.
While we're talking High Street, could we have some business cards printed up with the name and phone numbers of who, Main Dot, this guy, that guy? Because when people ask me about High Street, and I'd say, call Bob Watson. Well, I'd like to have a card and say, these are the guys that can control the pocketbook, call them. Because I tell you, if you take your car and you happen to be lucky enough not to have to go up the street, turn around and go back that way, and you cross, my God.
You don't want to have a cup of coffee in your hand.
So the good thing is now, then people that are asking you about it say it is on the docket for 2018.
Okay, I can tell them that.
I
Without telling them it was on the docket 10 years ago.
Leave that out, Dave.
Leave that part out.
Don't offer any more.
Okay, it's on the docket.
But keep in mind that DOT is gonna come in and they're gonna do a drainage project on High Street. That's gonna be the extent of their project. That busts the funds, that does everything.
Only the Glen Street.
No, I got them to go the rest of the way.
Okay.
The second part of that is I've enlisted us into a 50-50 program for the surface treatment. And I turned in a $180,000 estimate, and we will share that. Keep in mind that if they will share it, so at $180,000 each, us and them will each pay $90,000. If that project happens to go to $200,000, they're not going to share 50-50 on anything that's over.
So the highest they're going to go is 90.
The highest they're going to go is 90. But keep in mind, 3 years ago, when we did the project downtown that was $300,000, it was $150 each. Public Works went in and done a lot of that work in kind, and I think the city wrote a check for $70,000. So if there's any way that we can do some work on this ourselves,
We're going to save some money.
we're going to save some money, but we just can't count on that yet. You know, we don't have a grinding machine and we don't have a milling machine, so at the very least, we'll be able to charge off some flagging, some supervision. I charge Harley for my hours as a supervisor in the DOT. And there is a possibility that Public Works could do the sidewalk.
so Dave, if we, instead of having 225,000 of expense in 2018,
Yeah.
what you think, leave,
If the council would be happy with it, I'd be happy with that number being $100,000. And if we do spend 90 of it, you know, because we couldn't cost share.
All you gotta do is take the $50,000 out of the allocation. Okay? That's all that's in the allocation.
Okay.
It'll give you lots of money, you're not doing North Main, so there's 50,000 notes. Did we make a decision on the turnout gear?
Where are we at for the
I
numbers
gotta,
in the budget?
I'd like to add something to that if we can. Rather, go ahead and go with the recommendation, split it in half, but why don't we take the 25,000 that we have allocated for the airport and put it in the turnout gear, and that'll give us a little bit more. I don't think we need to put 25,000 into the airport this year. We have enough going into it.
Don't we have to pay somebody back?
We have to have a match on the T-hanger funds, and so that 25,000 is for the match.
Should have already had that in 2017 when we started the project. Did we not have that?
I will, I'll check into that. I know we've already expended,
Huh?
we've already expended more than $25,000.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So, just look at that. I don't know what $25,000 will do, but buy a few more suits anyway, and I think personal protective equipment's a little bit more important, especially if it's old.
Take out the 25,000 from your airport reserve.
Yeah. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
My opinion is if we can find a different way to get the turnout here, I think we need to replace all of it. It's safety of our firefighters.
Should order all at once because it's cheaper.
Exactly.
What do you say, 30,000?
You get about 10 sets free.
You just deal with one vendor, or do we put them out for bid?
I deal with, I've got 3 vendors I deal with, and right now I'm using the lowest price one, but it's quality gear and it'll all be the same.
Now, is there a resale value on these? Let's say you had something, let's say you had, no. You buy new ones today. 5 years from now, is it worth anything to anybody?
No.
I'd like to get, like Phil says, I'd like to get out of the deal where we buy 44 at a time. I mean,
Yeah.
or you put a reserve in,
Right, and then just
so that,
replacement.
so that whenever it comes up, you'll have it.
When it comes to stuff like that, that's just like selling bulletproof vests after their service life is expired.
How do you
Nobody
know-
wants it.
How do you know they're expired?
Because the manufacturer recommends that they're only good for 5 years.
What would you do if you were selling vests? Tell them they last 30 years?
I wouldn't wear it after 5 years, I'll tell you that right now. Putting it on and off all the time, the fibers and stuff like that are breaking down.
We've got a good vendor. He's helped us take care of them. I mean, he's fireproof thread, reflective. I mean, he's really helped us maintain what we have and keep writing them off to the standard and inspecting them. They're just.
But you have a cost associated with that every year.
I do. I do. And you know, you have a bad incident. You get diesel fuel on one, and the turnout gear's no good anymore. It's compromised with just diesel fuel at a bad accident. You get a bad fire and you start tearing it. Now you got to look at, you know, what's the safety of the person wearing it on how much stitching we're putting back into it. So
These are all custom fit. Are they one size fits most, or are they?
they're
The guys
custom
fitted?
fit to a size, but not. I mean, they're not tailored. They're fit so you have the breathing space. They have the air movement. So somebody's not wearing something too tight that they're going to get burned in because they don't have. You got to have dead airspace in them. So they're custom fit to that size that fits them, but they're not tailor made or anything like that.
Mayor, I would suggest, I think with those major cuts that we've already done between the Bird's Eye and these others, we may be able to find the rest of that as staff, and we can just know that you want to try to purchase all the turnout gear if possible, and if not, we'll have to split that up, but we'll have to have that discussion with the staff tomorrow so we can get the budget put together before our public hearing on Monday.
My only other question, economic development. are we looking at, do we think we're gonna have 414,000 there? Was that the number that was derived from the taxes out of the TIF districts, or what?
Expenses?
Under economic development, which is a TIF money. Your projection for 2018 manager adjusted was 414,669.
I haven't looked at the revenues yet for the TIF district on that.
I'm just guessing, I mean, it would have to have gone up from last year. I don't know if it would have gone up or not. Unless there's been a change in evaluations in it or something. I don't know.
That's one that I need to look at and, like I said, compare with the revenues projected for next year. Like all these expense items.
Because again, there's items in there that we don't have to have. We definitely have to have money in there to match funds for Bird's Eye and doing that cleanup. But, these new programs that we've got in there, the rental assistance and the downtown infrastructure, if we can do them, fine, if the money is there, but if it's not, the money has to be kept to do that site cleanup, slum and blight removal. Not just Bird's Eye, but we know we're going to have properties like that in town next year again, so.
Right. And that's the adjustment that, based on the other comments that I got from the council, so we'll be looking at the wages. I guess we also need to talk about the revolving loan fund at some point, and whether we leave that 50,000 in there or not. But right now, I've backed out the 10,000 for the rental assistance program and 5,000 for the downtown infrastructure. Backed out 5,000 for the new wine and dine event or what other event we could have maybe looked at there. And then instead of 105,000 for slum and blight removal, drop that down by $15,000. And also
down 15 or
dropped it 15.
Okay, drop
right.
it 15.
And then also, instead of $40,000 for market study and site design on the Bird's Eye site, reduce that by another 15,000, so we'd have 25,000 there instead of 40,000. So it really comes down to the $50,000 revolving loan fund discussion. I've had some discussions with Austin on that. The $50,000 that we've been setting aside for the revolving loan fund, what that is from the TIF district. In that TIF district, there was bulleted items of what we could spend that money on.
And one is economic development, which is what the loan fund is for.
One is very specifically a revolving loan fund of $1 million. And so back in 2014, the city said, well, we can put $1 million into the revolving loan fund, and there's 20 years left, so let's put 50,000 into that fund. Now, the way the TIF works is because we have those bulleted items, we can spend up to those amounts, but we can't spend over. And so there's other items that are in that TIF district that we could be allocating this money towards other economic development purposes, not specifically the revolving loan fund. Where we've already got $200,000 in one account and $274,000 in a different account for the revolving loan fund. It's a matter of maybe instead of putting $50,000 more into this account, we allocate that toward the Bird's Eye, and that helps make up some of the difference there.
Well, I think if we need it for the Bird's Eye deal, that's what we should do. But if we don't, then fine.
Yeah.
The money hasn't passed out. It stays here in a reserve.
Right.
I thought at one time that it was passed over to the CEGC, but no, it hasn't. But they check on it to see if it's been put into the fund or not every year. So, and it was the agreement with CEGC. I guess they were at a council meeting here and it was discussed, and that was one of the things that they brought up, that, if you put this in every year, it'll give us some money here that if someone wants to come and needs some help with building a plant or whatever, that we could at least do something to help out, so. Now, the fund is here, I don't know who has a decision on whether it's used or not. I don't know if that's ever been.
Where it's attached to the development district, the council would have the prerogative on those funds. So right now, it's $474,000.
Well, we have that in that revolving loan fund now, that 200,000 or whatever. What about the other funds? Is there any money in any of those right now that hasn't been used? That we've allocated on a yearly basis?
Most of it's been going into the events and trail improvements, which was one of those. I could get you a list of all the other allocations, but
I'm just interested in if there's money in them now that hasn't been spent.
we actually have a lot of reserve accounts with just little amounts in them that aren't reflected, and because we're not doing anything with them, we're just planning to clean them up. But we can get you a total on that.
And on the revenue budget, we built in the other $180,000 for the homestead exemption that we'll get this year. And I think the revenue sharing was 20 grand estimate.
20,000?
Yeah, increase.
Oh, increase.
And then the other thing we got to discuss, we got to talk about school money, do we? Or should we?
So we are anticipating a payment from RSU to help offset the mill. The payment is planned to come in 2 installments, the first being January 1st, and the second would come later.
None of the money allocated to the city this year has come in. And I don't know if I mentioned it here or somewhere else in the past. My thought process, and again, it's going to be up to most of the other people sitting at this table here, but my thought process with that money was the fact that the citizens in Caribou here have approved roughly $2 million extra in expenses for this new school, of which there's a fundraiser out there, but even if they raised $500,000, that's still $1.5 million that's going to be required. And initially when I looked at this, I thought that money should be put into a reserve account this year. There will be another sum next year from the state government, at least planned from the state government to the school district here. And next year they have to give 50% of it. This year they gave 40%. That those amounts should be put into that reserve fund, and then that should be used to pay down that, whatever that sum is, that $1.5 million or whatever, so that it won't affect the tax rate that much in the future. If you can use it now to try to hold it down, but you're going to just forego that later. So that'll be up to whatever council decides they'd like to do. So.
Well, right now, it's been allocated just as a general revenue into this bottom line, and so if that's...
You understand that money from the school has to go towards some education expense, which can be part of the school operating, yes, but it has to go to some school expense. It can't be assigned to, you know, build something on the rec center or something like that. So.
We'll get some educational development playground equipment.
We get a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, anything else you want to go through on here, or is there...
I'd like to talk about LED lights, street lights. The allocation that you have, is that just to replace the lights we have now, or does that replace some we've turned off?
The allocation amount that's in there right now would be the cost of the consultant group coming in and doing the analysis on all of these lights that we have.
It's just an estimate, David. It's not the actual until you get the engineering firm in here to go through it and decide what we need, because every one of them is different in the way that it's positioned and so on to give the light, and there is another option now, by the way, that I understand and some of the research I've done. The Emera is going to start not selling the lights. Like, we're looking at buying lights. We would own the lights under the program we're looking at. Emera now is looking at a program where they will own the lights, which I think means they would probably install them too. The catch is they don't give you the full reduction in the electrical rate then.
Right.
So I think you're talking about 40% if we do the lights as savings. But if you do it with Emera's lights, it's probably only 30, or there's a difference. So it's something that should be investigated before the project goes ahead, obviously. But it will be an option.
But again, the amount that's in there right now is just the cost that the consultant has in doing the analysis and bringing the numbers back to us to decide if we actually want to pull the trigger on the full buyout.
But my question is, do we send an engineer out to all these streets that have a street light that is turned off and do some, I mean, if we're not going to replace the light there? And what I got from Austin was that he was going to replace every light with an LED, even the ones we turned off. But I think that decision should be made by the council. They're off now. Do we spend engineering on what it would take to turn them back on or replace them if we're not going to do that? So I'd like the engineering to be done on the lights that we're using now.
And their initial study will include recommendations for where new lights should be put in or could be taken out.
Is this engineer an independent person, or is he trying to sell us lights?
No, it's independent.
Okay.
Yeah, they've worked with communities downstate that have done a similar program where communities have got together and as a pool help reduce the cost of everybody to come out and do these types of studies.
Dave, I know one of the communities they went in, and they were able to remove some lights because of the angles that you can get out of the LED lights provided more than what the street had. So they were able to put one in a different position that took the place of three.
Yeah, because I think you're saving more than 40% too with these LEDs.
But the engineer firm does a great job, and they look at the street and, you know, what do you want lit, and you can reduce the amount of lights with the way the reflectors are in a certain light that they put in. So there might be savings there too, but that's what they do. They really do a good job.
The percentage was a lot higher for the electricity itself, but in order for this project to go forward, the city would have to buy the poles, not the poles, but the masts that come on.
The standard.
Yeah, so once you start adding in some of the stuff that is above and beyond just the light itself, you start losing from some of that savings. So Gary's probably really close when he's talking like 40% saving.
And I take it Emera would do the maintenance on them too, if it's their light.
No.
No, not if we buy them. If Emera supplies them, yes.
We do Gary's plant.
Yeah.
But there is the deal with us putting them in and having someone else do it. 10 years, David? 10-year guarantee?
So the lights,
And
the meeting that I went to, and that real term company was talking about putting lights that had 100,000 hour expectancy out of the light.
but the maintenance was included for, was it 10 years or 5 years?
There was a warranty, I think, up to 4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
okay? And then there was some sort of decreasing, with one of the people that I heard give a presentation, a decreasing cost afterwards. In other words, they would come out and remain your maintainer, but there would be a cost for whatever they did, and if they got to replace something and so on and so forth.
They also had a warranty program where you could go out to 10 years if you wanted to pay so much per year.
So, but I think the initial warranty is up to 5 years, if I recall. I just read an article in the Portland paper that Portland is engaging in installing lights along with some Wi-Fi stuff, but that's an $8 million project, and that's not the whole city. And they're in the process of buying the lights from Central Maine Power, the same thing we're gonna have to do. I almost think that they're going at it alone, and that's why the cost is so high, whereas we're doing it, you know, collectively with some other communities. Was it 7 communities still in our? Yeah, but is 7 left, or is it more than that? Okay.
Manager, have you been keeping a running tab of cuts we've made?
Yes.
Okay, where are we?
Right now,
Been with a snowstorm from the looks of it.
I feel like it in here. Pretty warm in here.
Wasting
Lost by not running that?
energy.
Lost it?
Can't hear on
Screen.
so you were at down 200,000 plus down your capital improvement expenses, and that was the 80,000, 25, another 105,000. So you're down 300,000 from the budget. So you're at 10.5 now.
What was last year's budget?
10.2.
10.2?
Well, plus you took out the 2.5% COLA, so that's another 50,000. So you're probably about 10.4 or 5.
10.4 or 5?
10.4 and a half.
50 grand, yeah. And the budget last year was 10.2?
10.23.
And we're getting more revenue or less than last year?
It depends on what you do
Probably a
with the
little
school
less,
funds.
but also, did you say you put that money from the school into the general government fund for next year?
It's in there right now, so we'd have to back that out.
Yeah, so, how much was it?
142,000.
Yeah, 142.
So we received that already?
No, but it doesn't go to general government. It'll have to be,
This is the forecast for revenue for next year, okay.
Right.
but that revenue is gonna go, you know, if you wanna use it next year, it's gonna go back under the school and reduce the school payment. It's not gonna
Right, I got
come off of this. So next year, you could keep the taxes the same, but the school district will be less percentage of the taxes, and the municipal government will be more of the taxes.
It doesn't matter which side.
But it doesn't reflect on the municipal side. In other words, if you wanted the same budget, we gotta reduce it another 142, plus the other difference in the revenue, which is, what do you got here, 140? So 280, you're really 280 less on the revenue this year comparing to last year, if you're comparing apples to apples.
280 less,
Yeah,
so that's over $1 million again.
yeah. But David, if you say 4% here, if you want to limit it to 4%, that's pretty well a mill.
Well, yeah, but it's not more than, it's not $1 million and 2/3.
No?
I think just the very last thing I want to touch on with this whole thing is that there was some discussion between the library and a new part-time position there or not. And so right now the numbers include a 15-hour part-time help at the library.
I'd rather see them cut their hours to 8 hours a day.
And they have cut this one.
They have cut their hours and they want more help?
Well, they've cut the hours on Thursday or Friday and Saturday.
We said that we would open later on Thursday and Friday to tighten the staff, to fill in those gaps. It doesn't reduce our staffing, it just gives us our staffing where there's holes every day. Because the budget between 2010 and 2016, the staff budget was reduced by 48%. It was very high, and what it did was it left a hole. So I'm just trying to fill that hole where we don't have enough staffing. So it's 3 hours a day. So yeah, I'm looking at Thursday and Friday. If I cannot find a volunteer with a certain skill set, then we'll definitely do that. But I have to be honest with the council. When I open later, then we are reducing these hours when we have patrons that use the library. It's kind of like, you wouldn't see the general dollar store close between 1 and 3 because they have a couple customers come in, or businesses wouldn't close for 2 hours because maybe a few people come in. We always have people come in. We certainly can, tighten those hours. That's a contradiction to me building the library and having all these people come in and saying, oh, and we have this hole, now we have to reduce hours. So 15 hours actually makes us back to where we can function without worrying about if I have to go to a meeting, or somebody's ill, or somebody's on vacation, or something happens, where every day there's going to be a hole where we can't have one person working at the library. It's a large building, and policy says we can't have just one person working at the desk because somebody had to go away for a meeting. And so every day there's always that situation. And I tend to be able to fill it up. We tend to work really well to fill those gaps. We have done that. But 15 hours would bring us back to having the library have staffing enough to take care of the things we need to do and not juggle hours, and sometimes, not being able to really fill that slot. So, yes, we could open later, but I don't want to do that because that defeats our goals in helping our patrons, and that means all our patrons, not just the children, but the adults that come in. So.
Is there ever a time when every seat in the library is full?
Well, I think that's.
I mean, until you reach that point.
No, I mean, there are times that you can be very busy, but no, there's not a time where, let's say, the tea room could be filled, but the children's room is quiet. The children's room could be filled, but the tea room may be a few kids. But then in any business, you may have special events or special sales where it gets very busy. Then other times it's more quieter. You have things going on, but it's quiet enough to get your work done. So if you base it on if it's going to be always busy, that can't base it on that, because every day we have an influx of the library.
But it's not like you're selling a product and they're paying for it. They've already paid for it in taxes.
That's right, they
if you're open 8 hours a day instead of 10, people will make adjustments and go when you're open. I mean, that's what I do.
Well, you have to look at the history of the library. It was a very busy library, and then it just started diminishing because it's just the nature of you have less resources, less staffing, busy, and it starts filtering down. It gets quieter and quieter. People they're not able to get those services they did. So now I'm here, and I'm building it back up, trying to bring in, more business resources. So, yeah, yes, I mean, of course I can reduce those hours. And if I have to, I'm certainly not going to say no, but I'm going to say to the council that defeats the role of what we're doing here for the city of Caribou. But I understand. I mean, I respect the decisions you make. I'm not, it's okay. But I wanted to share that's how I feel about it.
It's also at the same time, and you have with Anastasia's time being on the floor doing other things that she could have somebody else doing. She's not able to go after all the other grants and things that might make up the difference of the $10,000 that a 15-hour person would have.
But this whole thing was brought up because I don't have enough staff to keep 2 or 3 people. Well, you open that's 10 hours a week if you open 2 hours a day less. That fills your holes. I just don't get the concept of why, I don't know.
It's a matter of how many hours do you think the library should be open in the city of Caribou for the people that want to use it?
I think 8 hours a day is sufficient.
I don't know what 8 hours you'd pick. I notice the library is usually very busy at night. So after after people get out of work and everything, then people that want to go to the library, I guess go over to the
So you're
library.
open 11 to 7 or noon to 8.
But you do have people that are coming and printing resumes and
Yes.
job searching and stuff like that. So the services are growing,
They're growing.
and the library patrons is growing
We have
potentially.
morning
And then we're
programs,
asking
have
to,
new programs.
right.
But you've created,
service
you
to the
people have created the problem. You introduce all this new stuff, and then you come and say, we don't have enough people to do all this stuff we're doing.
Well,
I mean-
that's what library directors do. I mean,
Well-
that's what Austin brought me in for. So I think that I'm trying to do the best I can for the community, which means doing the best I can for the council.
And
That's
it is-
my job.
It is convenient for people to have those resources because there are no other companies here that you can just go to and
Yes.
print a resume. We don't have Staples.
That's right.
We don't
Who's
have
gonna- that's right.
Kinko's. We don't
Who's
have any of
gonna
those
help
places.
That person
So those
figure out
have
how
to
to
be,
fill that resume, but the
So
library.
it is a
you
service.
guys just don't get it. If I want a resume printed out, it doesn't have to be from
Not
10 to
printed out.
noon. I can have it done, or whatever.
It's
If
not printed out. It's
whatever
something
it
to fill
is.
out.
If I don't have to do it 10 to noon, I'll do it from 12 to 2.
But it's a service to the community, and I look at it to say if it's a $10,000 cost and you can find that $10,000 in grants, it's a service to the community. So we want people to come to our community, so rather than cutting services, we need to maximize the services we have and be able to sell what we have and continue to grow, because that's what's bringing families here,
Yes, yes.
or will bring families here.
Yes, yes.
I know that there's a lot of people that are very excited about your bookstore.
Yes,
now,
yes,
so-
they are very excited about that, yes.
Any other comments?
We sold the museum, so.
You guys already packed it into this budget, the 10,000.
It's in there now.
I'm agreeable to leaving it in there.
Councilor McDonough,
What?
are you agreeable to leaving the 10,000 in there that's in the budget now?
I don't know. To be truthful with you.
Could you do could you track like how many people you have every hour? That
Yes,
could be
actually,
an assessment that could be used
We
to
can
make a
do
decision.
that. We do have a people counter that gives us tracking software, so then we can do that. Sure.
I think a lot of it, what she's trying to say is that she can't do her job because she's doing
Yeah.
a job of somebody else.
Yes, but she could if she closed for 2 hours and took that person that worked those 2 hours and filled those
That's
holes.
right, I could. You're right, I could. But I gotta tell you, I support these patrons. I think it's wrong to reduce hours and tell patrons, well, we can't open because we don't have enough staffing. Readjust your schedule. A lot of our patrons are on the fringes. They're economically, don't have a lot of money. They don't have computers.
Transportation.
Transportation, it's really a unique situation. So yes, I created this problem because I'm doing my job. I just want to do a good job for this council, and that means for the city. I'm not a slacker, I'm not lazy, I work very hard. If I can't get out there and advocate or work with businesses or other cultural institutions and just be at the circulation desk or running around up and down the steps, it's like, okay, but you have no idea how much we could do. Yes, no.
I would like to know how many libraries do exactly what you're doing.
Some do better.
Uh,
No,
I want to know how many out there are doing exactly what you're doing, okay? I believe in providing service to the community, but if it's for library use, all right? You see where I'm going with that? We have a job service in this community that is open for people that are searching for jobs. You doing passports still?
no,
No, okay.
no,
And that really worked out well. because I watched that program. So those are those types of things that you may take them on, that creates extra workload when you don't necessarily need to be taking that on. And I think that's the point that Dave's trying to make, is that are we doing core library stuff, or are we going
You're
above and
doing-
beyond, which it sounds
yes.
like you're doing?
That
No?
passport
But
thing,
I would just like to see what other libraries are doing, and maybe even in the local area, if they're providing that type of service.
okay, I can certainly
That-
tell you
that
that,
might tip
I can
my
find
I
that
don't
out
know
for you,
to it.
Phil. And I'm pretty comfortable to say, yep, that's what they do now. I have to tell you, long gone are the days of the librarian that goes in the office and closes the door, or sits at the desk and says, your book is late, you owe us fines. Our whole society has changed. Everything has changed. And libraries are more involved in providing resources for their patrons, their community, so that they can be empowered to be successful in their communities. So we provide resources. You know, we don't counsel people. We provide resources. And sometimes that's what people need, is information. That's what we're good at. And the veracity of information. That's why you have fake news. People turn away, they don't go to libraries anymore. Well, I just get my news on Facebook. I can't believe the amount of fake news that was in the last 2 years. And all librarians are saying, like, oh my God, come to the library, because we can tell you how to discern fake news. We don't tell you what news to believe in. Oh my gosh, no. But we can help you be smarter in how to determine when news is accurate or not. To be smart, to critically think. Libraries is food for the brain.
Anastasia,
yes.
you're causing part of the problem
I
here,
know
you know.
I am. I know.
Because a lot of those people coming in there to use them computers, you know where they're going?
Well,
They're going on Facebook.
Well, you know what? But that's okay, because some Facebook, it is what it is. I guess you're right, Gary.
That's my point. That's not what that computer is there for. That computer is there for people to use it as a resource to better themselves for the library climate, okay? But to come in there and go on Facebook and chat with your little friends throughout the world is
Okay.
not what the library is
Let
for.
me respond to that. Let's say there's an elderly patron that doesn't see, and this is the honest to God truth, they go on Facebook so they can talk to their grandkids or friends, because that's how people communicate. You may not have a Facebook, but I can assure you that those who go on are talking to families or to their... One woman came in with her device because she didn't know how to use Facebook, but talked to her son in Germany with instant messenger. I just sit down for 30 minutes to help her get this old device to work, and they said, do you have an email address? Well, I don't have an email address. Oh, we do that. So don't misunderstand. The computers are there for the patrons to use, be it for recreational, informational, work, and Facebook is one of them. Now, there is a computer there in which Facebook, Twitter is all blocked. Any kind of social sites are blocked because it's a business computer. So we can block sites if we want a particular computer to be used for specific things. I am.
In support of Tassie.
Sorry.
In support of Tassie and the library and the services they provide, I had come in today 5 online applications for a new client of mine. And I would make a bet that 80% chance that those were done from the library.
Mm-hmm.
This person is new to Caribou with no resources and a new client of mine. And they have to do the job searches, and there's so many places the job searches can only be done online. And I would imagine that Lisa, her clients are using the library for the resources in creating their resumes and getting out there and trying to get a job. So, anyway.
Who's talking about, we're not talking about taking anything away as far as services. I think it can get done in 8 hours. I mean, if I need to go online at the library and it's open from 11 to 7, I'm not going to go up there and bitch and says, I can only come in at 9:15 because I have this show to watch at 10. I mean, if it's open from here to here, that's when I'll be there. And it would solve your problem. And it would solve mine, that we don't have to spend money we don't need to spend.
The only comment I'll make, I've done a little research. I don't think the library's overstaffed.
But that's not what they came in with, Gary. They came in with a schedule with holes in it.
I know,
Okay.
I understand that. I also understand that it provides a service that, I mean, I don't use the library, but there's a lot of people in Caribou that do. And a lot of people that appreciate it, and I guess I'd probably be in favor of keeping the hours extended a little from not the 8-hour-a-day deal.
You been to the library lately, Timmy? Yes or no?
I've driven by it. No, I have the internet at home.
Jody, you been to the library lately?
There's a lot of cars in the
Lately,
area.
not lately.
A lot of cars in the area.
Mr. Aiken, you been there lately?
No? I just said I don't have a need for the library.
I haven't, however, I am bringing my
Dave,
girls
you?
to get books, so.
I was there about 3 weeks ago, I just want to let you know.
But I can tell you that I have moved national, to different countries, and military bases are set up the way she is running hers. And when you move to a new location, the library is the one place you can go to keep in contact with family, apply for jobs, and it's nice to have that resource available. And whether it's 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, if it's in people's schedule, and it's a good service to be able to provide.
If anybody is spending 10 hours a day at the library, they need to get a life.
But people have different schedules, is the point. So there may be people that work during the day that are going. There may be people that work at night. There may be young mothers who go while their preschool kids are at school with young children. And so people have different schedules, is the point.
They have a steady clientele over there. Okay?
And it's
They do. The parking lot's full.
well, and to
I
me, it's
understand your point,
$10,000.
David,
That's not.
that, if it's 11 to 7, that's the hours you go. But in theory, that could cause more people to be in there at one time
They need more
and
staff.
require more staff to look after them. I mean, I don't know if you're gaining anything.
I guess we're not gonna find out, are we?
I think it would probably be also good to point out that Anastasia is also doing things to utilize the areas better. I mean, that's a new sitting yoga class is being taught there, which is generating revenue for the library and also providing additional service. She's trying to do things to better utilize the facilities, and so it's not just a warehouse of books. But
It's sitting yoga, Dave.
Huh?
It's sitting yoga. You get to sit and do yoga.
Sit and do yoga.
Then he has to go to Wanda's class
Yeah, there we go.
at the rec center.
Did we take the $50,000 paving deal out?
yes.
So, the department managers have reviewed this listing, determined if there's anything that they see in there that's could be done.
I know I sent it out to them. I've gone over most of those with the departments that were most affected
And you've made any changes that you feel could be done?
based on
Okay.
what you've put there.
Yep.
The main thing that I haven't addressed was the wages, and we had that discussion tonight. So.
All right, well, I would remove the school money from the general
Revenue.
government fund.
Yep.
Anything else we have to address? Anything else you need to know from council?
I think, just so the council's aware, we do have the meeting on Monday. We have, maybe just to quickly go over that agenda with you so you know what's on the docket. It's a 2-page agenda, basically. And we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 formal public hearings. Some of those are junkyard license renewals. One is the application that we intend to submit for the EPA brownfield funding. We have to have a public hearing on that, and so that's on there. All of the ordinances that were introduced during your last meeting, we had public hearings on those. We have the public hearing on the capital expense and capital budgets, which we reviewed tonight, and we'll make sure that that's out. We have, under new business, taking action on the ordinances. We have a quit claim that needs to be reviewed. Discontinuance of Park Street will be on there. A resolution approving amendments to the Tri-Community Landfill interlocal agreement. We need to go through that proposal and where that's at, and we can have more information for you there. There's 2 requests for deferral of foreclosure or extension of, I guess they both be in the deferral of foreclosure realm of things for discussion with you. 2 new ordinances for introduction regarding rezonings, and hopefully we'll have a resolution to the airport T-hanger project and what's going to be done there for your review.
We didn't have it for tonight, apparently, huh?
I'm still waiting for
Okay.
that design.
Some renderings.
What's that?
Some renderings of what they want to do, or pictures.
I doubt we'll get renderings, but I haven't seen any cost estimates yet either. And then I do anticipate an executive session as well on some real estate issues.
Well, none of the public hearings should take a long time. I mean, we've actually done the budget. It's a public input for the budget, but we're not going to go through the budget again at the meeting, are we?
I wouldn't think so.
No, it'll just be open.
Open for
And
discussion.
anyone that has anything they want to discuss in it, then fine, we'll discuss it. All right, anything else?
Unless you've got questions.
Anybody have any more
I
questions?
got your number.
You're going to put out a new,
I'll redo all the numbers based on what we talked about tonight, and you'll get a new sheet.
okay. All right.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Hmm?
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
I don't think we have to adjourn a work session.
He just declares it closed, right?
Yeah, we're just done business.
He just
Were we on TV?
Yes.
Huh?
We were?